We have episode 7, lucky number 7 of the Pickleball Breakdown, Power Game Part 2. We are raising the heat from the kitchen. This episode will be published on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday because I just got back from the APP Women's Open in Columbus where my women's partner Megan Fudge and I took home the gold, so I'm a little bit behind. Please forgive us, but here we are. Like I said, it's lucky number 7, and that's what we're going to need, Scott, next week, a little bit of lady luck because we are going to MLP Vegas. But before we talk about Vegas, if you missed our last podcast, you know that we had a do or die MLP week in Virginia Beach last week. Scott, how did your team, the Bay Area Breakers, do? Did we make you proud? Did I listen to absolutely anything you talk about on these podcasts?
We absolutely did. To me, the biggest day of that weekend was day one. Day one, we had 2 matches against what I felt were teams we had to beat, right? Like every team is good. We could beat the best. We could lose to the worst too. But those were teams we had to beat, and we beat them. We beat them, 3-1, I think 3-1. And that really set the tone for the week. We lost to a couple good teams. And then we had, the results after day one were so-so, but day one really put us in there. I think it brought the team together. Our team chemistry was excellent. And I think it was all because of how well day one went.
Yep.
So we put ourselves in great position, and now we do control our own destiny, and we know what's in front of us. So, and I think we also learned kind of what I just said. We can beat any of these teams. So we just need to get to the playoffs because we can beat anybody. We also can struggle with anyone. So we really just have to bring it. But that's what you want, is you want that parity. It makes it fun to watch. It's a little too stressful for me to watch from the sideline when but it is the playoffs, the Challenger playoffs are going to be great because I have no idea, no predictions. It's like you can just toss the coin 5 times to see who's going to win.
Exactly. So we are in playoff territory right now. We're sitting, I believe, in 5th place. So we need to maintain that or better to make it to the top 6 for playoffs. And then for those of you that don't know, top 4 teams that finish this year, they are promoted to Premier. So there's a lot at stake here, a lot of stress. And for those of you that don't believe the level of stress, go check out my Instagram because Chris and I clipped a very funny reel of Scott kind of dancing with his shoulders, miming us hitting shots on match point and then getting so excited when we won match point. And I think we titled that, the stress of being the coach.
I don't know. That's like that. I live and die almost every shot you guys hit.
You do. I hate watching. I'd way rather be doing. So I just want you to know I appreciate everything you're doing, and I really empathize with you having to watch from the sidelines and how stressful that is. So keep doing you. Thank you.
No, it's fun. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
So let's get into it. The Power Game Part 2. We are raising the heat from the kitchen. Scott, talk to us about the evolution of the Power Game now at the kitchen line. Last episode, we did everything from the backcourt.
Yeah, I feel like when we talk about power from the kitchen, there's a few different categories to kind of break it down. I feel like countering power. There are these people that have, I think Adam Stone calls, when he describes JW, he says he has heavy hands. Right? It's like when J-Dub is countering, it's a heavy ball everyone he touches. So it's like there's countering power. There is also, like, from if we're just talking power game, there is, putting away high volleys and overheads. Like, can you put away the easy stuff? Do you have that kind of power? There's speeding up, creating power, and speeding up to me is also in 2 different categories. They're speeding up out of the air. They're speeding up off the bounce. And those are 2 really, really different things that, different players have different skill sets and different tendencies. So you need to know, and there's different ways of defending all of that as well. And then to me, the last part of power from the kitchen is just straight up firefight hands. Who's got good hands up there, and who has power there. So those are kind of my 5 topics when it comes to power at the kitchen. What are your thoughts?
I had 3 of your 4. So I had counters, speed ups, put away power. To kind of go over your 4, you said number 1, there's countering power, this notion of heavy hands. Number 2, put away power. Number 3, power creation. So that's either in the air or bounce speed ups. And number 4, hand speed. Did I miss one?
That was it. Exactly.
Love it. So we are totally aligned here. So let me ask you something. Where does power come from, right? Like we talk about put away power and countering power. Are there different types of power creation mechanisms for these 4 categories?
Yes, there's. I don't know if you ever watched the guys who do the podcast where they are evaluating all the different paddles, and it's like one of the categories is like a paddle's power, like the amount of power it has, and then the amount of pop it has. And it's like power is, okay, if I take a full swing and hit it, it has X amount of power. And then what they call pop is like, well, if I'm just small swing, then it's like that's kind of the pop power. And I think so. I think I would differentiate those 2 things. It's like, yeah, some guys, if you give them, and girls, if you give them a big swing, they can hit the ball really hard. That's just power. But other people, it's like they don't even need a swing. They just have just a quick pop, and that's also power. So I would say those are 2 different things.
Is one more valuable than the other? As a player, should you have both pop and power? Are they either or?
Oh no, you need both. You need both, and some people are better than others. If we talk about the countering power, like who are the players that have good countering power, and for like when I talk about this, I like to use the example of, hey, if someone just speeds up at the body and this player is waiting, right? Their paddle's kind of sitting there. Most of the people that I think about in this category sort of sit backhand, right? Mm-hmm. It's like JW kind of sits, his paddle's not even ready, and he's good backhand and forehand. He's kind of he's an anomaly.
He's an anomaly.
But he really is. Like, he looks like he's not ready for a backhand. He also looks not ready for a forehand. And if you think that's not, he reaches over and just annihilates it. So he's just baiting you. But normal people, like I think James Ignatowicz has big countering heavy hands. If you attack his body, he thumps that backhand. The one player we're going to be playing on Wednesday, Eric Lang, right? Mm-hmm. Eric Lang has a no-go zone. You do not speed up into his upper body backhand, because that backhand is just sitting there and he just crushes it. And like on the ladies' side, we're going to play Judith. Judith has a no-go zone, and it's that you do not go right at her body predictably into that backhand, because she just thumps it. Mm-hmm. So there's, to me, that countering power comes from them, them being ready, having the paddle ready, and just that quick hitting pop.
So if I want to get better at this first category, countering power, these heavy hands, what can I do? Can I learn to slide better? Should I always favor either a forehand or a backhand? What can someone listening at home do to get better and stronger at counters?
What I would say, get someone to drill with, and just dink down the line to each other, and just have one person be the attacker and the other person, is going to work on their counters, and do it controlled for a bit. Say, okay, on the third ball, just fire it right at my body, and I'm going to counter with my backhand. Boom. And then switch it up. Okay, now I want you to attack my shoulder, because one thing I haven't even brought up yet, what about those people with the scorpion counter? That's devastating, right? And that's where you kind of get over with that forehand. And that needs to be drilled quite a bit. So I would say drill the specifics. right? So that you're like, you work on that until you get that big backhand counter power, and then you get the scorpion going. And then once you feel like you're hitting those with big power, then have your partner not tell you like where it's going, and then see if you can just figure it out.
I will disagree with something that you say this podcast, I promise, but this I totally agree with. I think if you're listening at home and you're not doing this partner cooperation drill, trust me or don't trust me and go to a pro event and watch the pros warm up. There is a drill every single duo is doing right before they play. And it's this partner cooperation. You speed up, I counter, and then we switch. So if you're not doing this at home, what Scott just outlined, one person is the attacker, one person on the counters, third ball and fire, you should be. And you'd be amazed at how quickly you can improve your counters at home. Is there anything else you do for counters? And should everyone always favor their backhand? Why do I feel like 95% of players are kind of sitting there shading backhand?
It's so that question is, now you get into a lot of complications. Like there isn't a simple answer there. It's like, also because of a lot of being good at countering, it depends on where the ball is positioned in front of you and who the personnel is in front of you. So it's like, I'm being lefty. I'm nearly always playing on the right side, and so when there's a right-handed player on the left side in front of me, it's like, okay, well, my job is to kind of cover the line. My partner typically has a lot of the middle responsibility, so me sitting backhand makes a lot of sense. But if you are right-handed on the right side, and so now it's like you have your responsibility is covering the line. Now you've got two choices.
Yeah.
If I'm covering the line, it's like, well, I can kind of scorpion or sit forehand, or if I read it, I can slide with the backhand. So you've got choices, and it depends on your skill set. Also depends on what your opponent has available.
Should you guess or never guess? Should you slide early if you feel like you have good anticipation and you see something? Or should you wait and play this game of chicken before choosing whether to hit forehand counter or backhand counter?
Yeah, that is kind of the
I'm asking the tough questions. I'm asking the tough questions. And it's fair to say, look, there's no hard and fast rule, but I'd love your general opinion on slide and guess, hold and wait.
Yeah, like slide and guess makes it seem too random. Like whenever I'm teaching and people are guessing, it's not working. So I'll say educated guessing. And educated guessing is, well, I've watched what this person has done in the past, and so based on that, the first time I'm going to educated guess and move and do this. Let's say, right, since we're talking about we'll jump ahead to topics to the people who create power, right? If you have someone who's in front of you who is speeding up off the bounce, at the pro level, it's like, well, you have to play that. You need to try and counter that. At the amateur level, that's such a low percentage play. I like to tell people, let that first one go, and you get two pieces of information. You find out, one, is my opponent capable of making this ball? And it's like, okay, well, if they miss, you're winning. If they make it, so you know they can make it, and then you also know where they want to go with it so that you can defend it the next time. But if you just play it and then you lose, it's like, well, guess what? Now you've just reinforced that they'll probably speed up some more, and now you're kind of in trouble. So it's like, as we talk about this power game, we also need to talk about the answers to that. And so I do like the letting the ball go at first, just to get the information so that you can have an educated guess on the next one.
I love the educated slide and guess. I will absolutely agree with that. I find that if I'm too still and waiting too long, I have to basically commit to either getting hit by the ball or resetting it. if you want to, this episode's not on resets, but if you want to reset the ball, great. Try not to move that much, right? Let your paddle do the work, let the ball come to you. But if you want to counter the living daylights out of the ball, I do think you need an educated slide and guess. And I find that's when I'm countering my best, is when I'm committing a fraction of a second before the opponent's making contact to a direction. But that's personal. And like you said, it's really ball dependent.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
So let's talk about putaway power. Where does it come from? Is it you got to be 6'4"? Congratulations, you have leverage. I did this post on Instagram that said I'm 5'9", but I identify as 6'2", and I'm flying around the court playing with 5'5" Anna Shirley. Trying to play big and play mixed doubles. So am I just lucky and tall and I have putaway power? Where does putaway power come from?
To me, when we talk about putaways, there's an implication that it's like, well, I've got a reasonably, relatively easy ball, which also means kind of I have some time. And so when you have time at the kitchen, then your technique is going to determine how much power you have. It's like kind of the rhythm of your arm and your wrist and the timing of the snapping of just that whole sequence. So to me, technique is where power comes from on a slow ball when you have time.
I know so many 6'3" guys who can't put a ball away, and they're muscling it as hard as they can with their arm. And if we think about power creation, like when you crack a whip, it's exactly what you just said. It's wrist, snap, sequence, technique. So how can someone at home who's maybe arming the ball and not generating power on these putaways, what drills can they do to increase their putaway power?
If you've ever played with someone who plays badminton, comes from the sport of badminton, oh boy, do they have this. Like backhand and forehand, if you have the ability to play some badminton, that will kind of it'll reset this sequencing and kind of your timing and what actually can happen, because the paddle's longer and it's going to take you some time to get used to hitting it there, but it will allow you to you'll get some more brains in your wrist and arm connection, which is what you need. Other than that, I would say if you're not going to do that, just have some easy feeds and sort of just see how loose you can kind of swing with no pressure, and then just see how accurate can I be with just a really loose arm.
Yeah. I'd say practice overheads, right? Like there are a couple pros on tour, a couple guys. I love them. I love them both. I'm not going to name their names. They're top players, but boy, are their overheads utterly atrocious. And they don't have a tennis background. And you can tell, right? Because it's not only in the way they move, it's in the way they arm the ball, thinking they're going to create power with that shoulder, with that arm. And I'd say, like, hey, go master your overhead. And I think if you can hit really good overheads, then when you get that high put away at the kitchen line, you're gonna be like, oh man, that's easy. Another good drill is try and just use your wrist. Try and take the smallest, poppiest stroke you can. We talked earlier about pop versus power, or pop and power. Try and pop that ball. Scott, do you like that advice?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, as you said that, like some of the names that come to mind on the women's tour, I think Tyra Black she is one of the most like efficient at putaways, and it's very wristy. It's also very creative. It's very accurate, and it's amazing how hard she can hit the ball. And it is mostly with the timing of the wrist. It is not her arm doing all of the work. If you look at James Ignatowicz's arm on an overhead, it's like that's huge. If you look at her putting the ball away, her arm is doing a lot less than his, but it is highly effective.
So if you're listening at home, don't despair if you're not 6 feet tall and above, because there is excellent news. So you just heard it here first from Scott. Putaways are about wrist and pop, not about sheer brawn, height, or strength.
Another person who's an example of that is watch Xiao Mei. Xiao Mei, he crushes high forehand volleys and overheads, especially his high forehand volley. It's like that's, and he is not the biggest guy on tour. He is one of the smaller guys, and his power is amongst the top guys there. To your original question, it really is about kind of sequence and technique, and then after that, it's about accuracy. It's like, yeah, I need technique to hit the ball really, really, really hard. But I mean, why is pro pickleball so fun to watch? Because all those balls come back. Gosh, watch any match with our teammate Elise Jones. If you want to see big, powerful overheads come back, if they're not well located, it just comes back. So yes, you need to work on this power, but this power also needs to hit near a sideline or near the middle, and be used kind of in combination. You can't just power isn't good enough anymore. Yeah. So you need some accuracy too.
Something you just said reminded me of a technique our listeners at home could leverage to generate better putaway power, which is aim for angles. So take that high forehand putaway and practice actually hitting the sideline, hitting as deep of an angle as you can, and that's naturally going to get your wrist. Snapping. So try that at home. So Scott, let's talk about this notion of power creation. Kind of the category number 3. We have bounce speedups and in the air speedups. Which would you like to tackle first?
Let's talk about taking it out of the air first. I think that's the higher percentage way to go. I mean, I think that's the classic pickleball idea is, I think the reason that the inventors of this game put a kitchen line there is so that it just couldn't just be bang 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 all the time, right? We've talked about earning your speed up. And this is where it's at. It's like, okay, have I hit a good enough dink that maybe the reply is going to float a little, and then I can reach out and do something with it. And if we talk about who's the best at that, I think the list kind of starts and ends with Ben Johns. That is just his way, and I think that there's so many things he does that a lot of people don't do. Like as soon as he hits a dink, he knows how good that dink was, and then he's kind of figuring what are the possible responses. And before that response comes, I think he's already kind of picked out where are the spots I'm going with this ball. And I think that's different than almost everyone else. I think everyone else, they hit a good shot, and then as it comes back, they just get to this is high enough, I can hit it. I'm just going to hit this ball hard. I mean, I know that's one of my problems. I see that ball and I just flick it as hard as I can, but it kind of goes to the same spot every time. I'm not like choosing spots. And when you watch Ben, it's fun. Like when you're thinking of it in this way, that it's like with that flick, he'll hit their right shoulder, then the left shoulder, then he'll break their ankles the other way. And it's like he's kind of pre-planned more options. I mean, also kind of has a ton more skill, but if you just think about some different spots, it's not just power that's going to win this for you.
So when we're creating power out of the air, or we're attacking out of the air, focus more on spots. I agree with that. And I think one way to practice this at home is try and hold the ball on your paddle as long as you can, right? The big mistake we make is we're so anxious to hit it, we swing really fast, and that's going to get you hitting the tape. And one of the best pieces of advice Scott ever gave me was hit a bunch of forehand volleys in the air, but dinks. So catch it in the air and just dink it. I want you to do 100 of those. That's what you told me. And then all of a sudden, now I want you to flick them, lob them, change up the spots, get creative with it. So if you're looking to improve your in the air attacks, I'm going to give you the Scott Crandall drill, the 100 forehand volley dink drill. Do you like that still, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's implied in that is if you reach out and it's a dink sometimes, it's a lob sometimes, or it's a flick, then you have the deception, the element of surprise, and that is really what if an attack doesn't have any deception, it's much less likely to work. You can't just telegraph, pull the trigger, and have that work. Players are too good. So kind of, I think as you just described that, it's like, well, you just said, well, if you can do 3 different things with this ball, it's like now they can't prepare for all of those. So it's nice to have options. I would also add to the out of the air thing. The higher you can catch this ball out of the air, the harder you want to hit it. So, and if it's below the net, now it's going to take a lot more skill, and the target matters a heck of a lot more. You know what I mean? It's like if you're speeding up from below the net, it's got to go up. So you can't just crush it. And so and if you're hitting, if you're below the net and you're hitting it up, they've got some huge counters possibly available. So it's much higher risk, a much higher skill play. If they pop it up and you're at net height, well, you can just hit that one hard. And so don't get too cute with it if it's up. Just crush it. But if it's not up, if you're out of the air and kind of net height or slightly below, it's like, well, you can reach out and flick that. That's where you want to be accurate and kind of aware of what the good targets are.
So talk to me about aiming. We kind of grow up as pickleball babies, learning the do's and don'ts of where to speed up and when to speed up. And something we learn as a pickleball toddler is no cross-court speed ups. Well, that's dead. Maybe it never even existed. So where do we want to speed up?
Yeah, that's that. You do ask like all the kind of $1 million questions.
Sorry.
And so if we go back to when we talked about, well, where are all these heavy counterers sitting, right? Those who you need to know your opponent. If you've got someone who sits heavy backhand, well, then you're going to need, you don't want to speed it up there. You're going to have to find that person's forehand. But if you're playing someone who loves their scorpion, well, if someone likes the scorpion, the one weakness to the scorpion is it has to be kind of above the waist to hit a scorpion. So even if they have their scorpion loaded, if you can get that ball down to their knee, they cannot hit that shot. So the generic answer is you always want to go to the person's dominant hip, right? If they're right-handed, go to their right hip. That's kind of that's the basic pickleball textbook answer. And the reason that is the case is most people are kind of sitting backhand, therefore changing from backhand to forehand is awkward, so that's where you go. But now that things like the scorpion exist, and there's just people who prefer their forehand, if someone prefers their forehand, I wouldn't want to hit into that. So you got to know your personnel.
Yeah, I don't even have a right hip anymore. I don't know if you knew this or not. I had it surgically removed. No, in all seriousness, I don't have a right hip anymore because I hit a two-handed forehand now. So there is no hips on me. There's just my two-handed forehand and then the two-handed backhand on the hips. And that has been working really well. Megan Fudge was practicing it. We were practicing it together after she saw me doing it. She was like, oh, that's really cool because there's no backswing, which it's totally true. So for me, like my hands are my fastest when I actually keep my left hand on my paddle the whole time. And I swear it gives me like this extra entire second where I'm not having to like remove a hand from my paddle. And that's why so many people, I think, like to just sit one-handed backhand. But guess what? I'm not strong enough for that. Okay. Like I'm tall, I'm strong, but I got a skinny little wrist and, I'm working on my shoulder strength. I'm not strong enough to hit huge counters one-handed. So the two-handed has been like absolute money. I don't know if you've noticed. Have you seen me doing that?
I mean, I've noticed, well, because you and I have kind of worked on your, we a couple weeks ago we talked about your readiness so that people can't, you can't be hit anymore, right? Because your paddle is kind of up there ready. And what I've noticed is that you've been countering down really well. And it's like, yeah, it's like I would much rather you counter down than counter hard. Hard always just hard can come back. Everyone's got good hands, but if you get the thing down, you're usually winning.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest separations in level. We talked about the fourth shot as being a level separator. I think the the true understanding, the true comprehension that countering down is more important than countering through. Getting the ball down is more important than getting the ball through someone. So I'm going to keep asking you really hard questions on the topic of speed ups. If we shift to the bounce speed up, is that where the future of the sport is going? I feel like I'm playing pro. I'm obviously watching it nonstop, and it's more and more bounce speed ups and bounce speed ups from pretty far behind the line. And what that's creating, and Anna Lee does this a lot, is like daring the opponent to counter, and you're like sitting in a better position. You've bought yourself more time because you're a little further back. So you can be a little further back, rip a bounce speed up, and then close on the next one. Is that the future of speed ups?
I think so. I mean, I do think I do think pickleball is gonna be a lot more like bounce speed ups are coming. And I think it's I think because bounce speed ups are there's a lot working against them. I think it's just going to make all of the counter to a bounce speed up, that's going to get a lot better, and then it will slow back down. So I think it's going to pick up and then it's going to slow down, because once it works, and if it's like in this topic, let's talk about some people who are really good at it. I think Xiaomei is really good at the bounce speed up, especially on his backhand. Mm-hmm. He moves really well. He moves his feet really well. He kind of turns sideways, so you can't tell where he's going. And then he almost always makes it. And that's what separates him to me from a lot of the other people who do it. Like, a lot of these bounce speed ups just aren't going in, but his are going in. And the other thing he does is he does change his spots. It's not always down the line. It's not always down the middle. So when he kind of turns when he runs and turns, and you're in front of him, that's where it's like, well, you might have to guess in the bad way, because he can hit both spots and it's very hard to read. So he is very good at it, provided that he chooses the right ball, right? The right ball is one where he needs a little time, and it does need to be maybe a slower ball that's going to sit up, right? If you're just knifing dinks to him, well, that's going to be a tough one, because if you're hitting an aggressive dink with some backspin, it's going to kind of, it's going to slide, it's going to stay low. That one's hard to attack. But if you're rolling, it's like if you're rolling dinks to him, the two-hand roll, that one is going to bounce, come up. He will have time. He has the speed to get where he needs to be, and that he can fire kind of on his terms.
The biggest mistake I see players make when bounce speeding up is they're trying to speed up too quickly. And bounce speed ups are 90% of the time a 1-2 punch. You are not trying to speed that first ball up to win the point. You're speeding it up to set yourself up. So if you want to get better at home at bounce speed ups, yes, do what Scott said, work on your footwork, change the direction of your shots, but also work on hitting it as slow as you can. Martin Emmerich, my MLP partner on the Bay Area Breakers, and I actually like to warm up the exact same way. We go a couple dinks, and then I hit a speed up at him that he could just annihilate, like hit me in the face with, but he's not going to, because he's my partner. And what I'm working on is hitting my speed up, my bounce speed up as slow as I can. And then the next one I hit's a little faster and a little faster, but I'm starting from an absurdly slow speed. And that drill has taken my bounce speed ups, which frankly, I think 3 months ago were like atrocious, except on my backhand, to making them actually one of my favorite aspects of my game right now. Scott, do you like that advice, or is there any other advice you have for those of us at home who want to get better at bounce speed ups?
No, I like that advice. If I was gonna add to that, I would say similar to the, in a way you can, the drill we talked about before on learning counters, right, where you have one person attacking the other person like countering. You could just kind of modify that to that attacker is the person working on their bounce speed up, and then maybe have the defender work on their resetting instead of countering, so that the attacker can kind of work on their spots and their technique. One of the first when I first started playing pickleball, Jeff Warnick gave me some advice on speed ups, and he was like, "Well, the first and most important thing about any speed up, it's got to go over the net."
Yeah, he's right.
That doesn't necessarily have to go in. You won't believe how much people will play it.
Yeah,
and so
right.
That's where the repetition, it's like you got to make it, right? That's the first one, and so that's where the practice comes in. But practice with that in mind. Don't just rip these, ripping this thing into the tape isn't helping you.
That drill you just outlined, that's exactly what Martin and I do, and we take turns doing that drill. So it's handy that we're MLP partners because we both want to do the same drill.
Yeah, that is definitely a great drill. But then the mentality that you need during the like you said this, you just said this. It's like you can't rush it. You can't just pull the trigger too soon. I think you said something to that effect. Yes, you have to. This sort of builds. You have to be able to. I mean, when you talk about the future of pickleball, it's like there's so many people that like I'm sure you can think of some where it's like, well, they're going to hit 3 dinks and then it's coming, right? There's certain people that they're not going to hit a 5th dink, right? They're not lining up their 10th dink, right? It's like 1, 2, and they're just getting antsy. It's coming. And it's like, it's coming on the first one that they get time for. Like when you have, if you're given time, oh good, I can move my feet. I need the time to move my feet, and I need the time to watch where my opponent is.
Yeah.
And then get my paddle ready. And it's like, if I do those things, this is, I've got some options, and I've got some good opportunities to be aggressive.
Yep. The 4th category in terms of power and power creation is hand speed. And I'm so excited to talk about this last and final category. At MLP, I went 10-4. I was number 1 in the player standings, even though that makes no sense because actually my partner, Megan Fudge, was the only record better at 11-3. But they also look at like percentage of points won. Either way, I had a good MLP. And I attribute that to hand speed. For the past 2 weeks, I have been working nonstop on getting my hands faster, getting my counters better. A huge piece of advice you gave me, Scott, was my hand positioning was too low. So I went back to the drawing board, and for 2 weeks I played with my training partner here in the desert, Kyron Burrell, what I refer to as cracked pickleball. So there was no dinking for 2 weeks. It was like I'd feed a ball and the point was live. So if I fed it a little high, I'm going to get hit in the face. And that's how we played. And I tried to get my hand positioning just a little bit higher. And it's crazy what a big difference that makes. That for me, and keeping my left hand on the paddle and just committing to that 2-handed forehand. And I feel like my hands are the fastest they've ever been with that super minor change. That was thanks to you. So Scott, for us listening, for everyone listening at home, what are kind of like your keys to hand speed and evaluating how to help someone get quicker hands?
Okay, so I think when we talk about power, right, we're kind of talking about this in the context of power. And in firefights, a lot of people overswing in the middle of a firefight, and that makes them not ready for the next one, And so when I think about the people who have really good hands in firefights, are the ones who can do it small and kind of leave their paddle there so that there's, you know, the reload is just kind of instant. Or so it's like the people to me that have like kind of the heavy firefight hands, like I like to think of the way Hayden, when I watch Hayden, and I haven't talked to him about this, but I feel like he's just flinging the paddle forward at the ball with a slight downward angle on his paddle. And it's just, as soon as someone attacks him, he just flings it forward, and then boom. And then he just, I don't know how, it's like just really fast. He can just they just keep doing it. Like Gabe Tardio is another one where it's like, it just looks like
Anna Bright has a very quick reload.
Yeah, she like, and hers like it's with two, and it's like she just doesn't overdo it. She's just like quick, and then both forehand and backhand, short, quick swings with really good reload ability. And the people, I think, amateurs often overswing at the first one, and then they're just never going to be ready for the second one.
Yeah, because wherever they finished their swing, that's where it ends. They just leave it there. And then they admire the shot they just hit versus this notion of keep it in front of you. Keep it like you had a little, like, imagine you have a straight jacket around your forearms or something tying your wrists together almost. And how do we keep that triangle, your hands in front of you? How do we make it so we fling it forward, we keep it small, we keep it in front, and then we're bringing it back to neutral? Those to me are the keys to fast hands.
Yeah, if I was going to say a drill to kind of work on this is when you have a partner in front of you and you're drilling fast hands, it's like have one person hit everyone down the line and the other person hitting one cross court, right? We're still just volleying, but it's like, so that we're going forehand, backhand, but we're also being accurate. And then kind of switch that up so that you're not doing just fast hands out of control. You're doing controlled fast hands, with where it's important to be ready for the reload and the next shot. Does that make sense?
I knew I would find one thing to disagree with you on. I've been waiting 42 minutes and I found it. I see pro players doing this drill, and I know Ben Johns does it. I've seen, the Instagram videos of him and Colin doing exactly what you just said, focusing on the ball coming back to the same spot. And that bothers me. That kind of twists my nips. It gets me in a tizzy because I'm like, I don't want to know where the ball's going back to. That defeats the purpose of fast hands. But you know what? I'm going to try it because I'm open-minded, Scott. I'm going to try it and I'm going to report back.
Well, the context in which I gave that was, how do I
get better?
How do I keep my technique small with a reload? And so it's like, well, if I'm going backhand and then forehand and then backhand and then forehand, and the other person is doing the same thing,
yes,
big swings won't allow you to keep that drill going. Now, is that going to give you the fastest? It's not realistic because no one's going to put it there. But it will give you some control. I also like doing that similarly from 3 feet behind the kitchen line with a little fuller swings.
What? Explain yourself. Yeah. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, no, just do fast hands, but it's not small. Now it's not just small punch volleys. It's more swinging volleys. This is, I would say, I don't like always making a distinction between men's pro and women's doubles, but I do see in women's doubles there's more bigger full swings at volleys at the kitchen, and it's like I'm not good enough to do it from the kitchen line, so I have to back up from 3 feet. I need the time to do it, but getting the rhythm of that, you'll get a shorter, smaller, full swinging volley. And if you can keep that rally going, it's much harder. Like when you back up, that instead of 14 feet away, now you're 20 feet away. And so being accurate from 20 feet takes a little more power, a little more accuracy. All of it is going to be harder. But if it's if it's small and small swing, firm shot, reload, there's good stuff there. That will help your hands.
I actually do that drill cross court with a partner. We're both like 4 feet behind the kitchen and we're ripping backhands at each other. So we're both on the left ripping backhands. I don't do it as a fast hands drill though. I do it as kind of like a poaching drill, right? To emulate that, like, okay, I just came in, I'm going to split step and then rip. So I do that drill. I have a philosophical question for you.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, as we know, is an emerging, I think I called her a 5-0. She got mad at me. So we'll say like 5'3", 5'4" player. And she said to me, Jill, you told me to look to take every single ball in the air at the kitchen line. And then I go and I turn on Pro Pickleball and everyone's letting every single ball bounce. How do you explain yourself? Is it feel and then there's real? Like, to me, all the pros are looking to take it in the air, but they're dinking well. They're pros, so they bounce.
Yeah. So like there's your advice is good generally, right? It's like I would, like, for my game, I would much rather take the ball out of the air. And I would, if I'm watching someone play, I would much rather watch the players on my team attack out of the air.
Me too.
That implies they hit some good shots to earn that. They forced their opponent to pop the ball up. They positioned themselves well, and now they get to attack. That's great. But if you have, a very highly skilled, worthy opponent who is not popping balls up for you to attack, and you're not, it's going to be harder to earn. Now you're going to have to earn it from, off the bounce. And taking the ball out of the air versus letting it bounce, well, everyone has different amount of reach. Everyone has a different amount of quickness. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have reach and you aren't the quickest on the court, you're going to be letting a lot of balls bounce. So yeah, you might want to get good at handling that, or you want to get good defensively off the bounce, and then you want to develop your offense if you're going to have to let all these balls bounce too.
I think what makes these conversations in this podcast so darn fun is that there is no pedagogy on pickleball. There really isn't. There is no tried and true formula for instruction and teaching, and the game is literally evolving on a weekly basis with new strategies, new techniques, new paddle technology, new, more athletic players with a different mindset of the game coming in. So what Scott and I are trying to do is give you some rules to live by, but a very smart man once said to me on our last podcast, once you know the rules, you get to break them. So we're here to keep you as updated as possible. And we hope that you enjoy these conversations as much as we do. Scott, is there anything else you want to add to the power game before we talk about our next episode?
No, I think it's just hey, to the old school people, like, embrace it because it's coming. Like, there's resistance is futile. It's like, if you don't like it, get better at countering and you can shut it down.
I agree. With that said, podcast number 8 will not release next week because we will be at MLP, but the following week. What are we going to be discussing?
We should talk about like partners, how to be. You see so many partnerships, and you watch all these tournaments, and like the one you just played, I saw a bunch of partnerships that I had not seen before. It's so interesting. So let's talk about how to be a good partner next time.
And how to get good partners. What do you think?
There's some secrets to that too, yeah.
All right, next episode, how to be a great partner and how to get great partners. Don't miss it. As always, you can write us at thispblife@gmail.com or drop a comment in YouTube. Have a good one, guys. We need a sign off. Coach Jilly B and Scott C are out.